Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Decatur Dish. I'm your host, Decatur-ish editor and founder, Dan Wisenhunt. Joining us today is the man who has been CEO of DeKalb County for the last 8 years, Mr. Mike Thurmond. Mike, how are you today?
I'm great, Dan. Thank you for the invitation to be with you today.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if you live in DeKalb County, you might have noticed the last 8 years have been relatively tame and mild compared to some of the news headlines you might have seen in DeKalb County before Mike Thurmond took office. So I think everyone is in general agreement that it's been a lot more stable over your tenure than it has maybe in the past. Walk us through that. So you took over at DeKalb County at a time where the previous CEO had been indicted, went to prison, was released. There had been seemingly one scandal after another. And that was the context in which you took office. What would you say was the biggest challenge that you faced once you were elected and sworn in?
Dan, the most important thing we had to do, and I do say we, was to restore trust and credibility with the taxpayers and voters and residents and citizens of DeKalb County in our government. And I'm just so proud that we had a team there in DeKalb County as well as at the state and in the municipal communities, our municipal leaders. We all came together because we wanted to do what's best for DeKalb County, and over 8 years I think we were able to make some progress.
So as people are aware who live in DeKalb County, the CEO is a term limited position. I think it's one of the few offices in DeKalb County that does have a term limit. 8 years, if you had the opportunity to run again, would you have run again?
No. Not that I was
Care to
not
elaborate or
not that I was not enjoying it and having fun. No, in life, mission creep. You always need to avoid mission creep in life. And we had some goals and objectives. I did when I came into the office. We were able to achieve achieve those objectives and even more. And then it was time to move on to give someone else, in this case, Ms. Lorraine Cochran Johnson, who succeeded me, I think will do a great job. And I think the county will be able to benefit from a new governing authority. Oftentimes in positions like this, you want to stay. I teach young leaders, leave while the audience is still applauding. Don't wait till they start booing. And so hopefully we left while there was still applause from the audience.
So on the way out, Mike Thurmond's administration left a $150 million, they're calling it a rainy day fund. I believe the actual number is closer to $157 million, but it was rounded down to anticipate any cost overruns and that sort of thing. Tell me a little bit more about this rainy day fund. How much of it is unrestricted cash that can be spent on anything, and how much of it is stuff that has to be spent with specific intent?
Roughly $83 million is in the general fund, that, as you said, that can be spent on anything that the governing authority chooses. The other is split up between the fire fund, the police fund, hospital fund, and also some tax relief. I'm proud, Dan, of that because when I took office on January 1st, 2017, DeKalb was suffering from a $27 million structural deficit. We had deficit spending for at least the previous 6 years. And one of the commitments I made to myself that I would leave the county in a better position fiscally than how I found it. So the new CEO will inherit, as you stated, $150 million plus fund balance as opposed to a deficit. We created a plan. The commissioner supported the plan. Our department head stuck to it. And consequently, we're in a much more stable position as a county as we move into what may be some very choppy economic waters going forward.
So if you were taking office again and you had been left with an $80 million pile of money that was unrestricted, what would you do with it? Would you save it for a rainy day? Would you spend it on something? How would you handle that?
I would continue to reserve it for a rainy day. I served as labor commissioner for 12 years, and I promise you, there is a recession on the horizon. It's been predicted for several years. Some of the trends we're seeing, major Retailers are shutting down, big lots, party city. I'm very concerned about the next 24 months. And with inflation continuing to stay at historic levels, I just think we need to save the money because we'll need it. One of the challenges DeKalb had was during the previous Great Recession, there was a series of layoffs and service cutbacks that crippled the college for many, many years. So let's save it, spend what we generate, but always know that the rainy day, one day it will rain, I promise you.
And for people who are listening out there who are in charge of such things, journalists are essential personnel. So if there's a recession, remember, we're very essential.
Especially the Decatur Dish.
That's right. Wanted to talk about animal control because this is an issue that gets talked about so much in our community. Shelter overcrowding seems to have gotten worse over the last few years with the recession and with the pandemic rather, and the people, I guess they were adopting pets and then letting them go and they couldn't bring them to a new apartment, and then you had some pets that were caught up in sort of legal proceedings. Talk to us about the state of the animal shelter and what the new CEO is inheriting as she takes her job.
Well, you pointed something out. During the Great Recession, when we were sheltered in place, many people sought companionship
Not the Great Recession, the pandemic.
Well, the pandemic. I'm
Right.
sorry.
No worries.
People sought companionship because we were home. You couldn't go out. Various entertainment venues were shut down. Then the pandemic was followed by inflation. It became very expensive to have a pet. And so many pet owners had to make a horrific choice. Do I feed my family or do I continue to feed the family pet? And so consequently, we had this historic increase in the number of animals that were being taken in, not just in DeKalb, but all across this nation. It's a national crisis. And so, and on the issue of the animal shelter, I readily admit to you, I played a support role in that. Michelle Long Spears, Robert Patrick, some others led that effort. There were some animal rights groups that were very vocal. But what I was able to do is develop a plan and then play a key role in providing $12 million additional dollars. We broke ground, I guess, 2 weeks ago on an expansion of DeKalb's animal shelter. The first event I attended as the CEO of DeKalb County, we broke ground on a new $12 million facility. It was $14 million. The last official groundbreaking, no, it wasn't. It was close to being next to the last, was an expansion of that same facility. So that just shows you the arc of the challenge we face in making sure that our furry friends, as Michelle Long Spears refers to them, are treated in a humane way. We've made progress, but it's just something that's never ending, and we must constantly remain vigilant to make sure that we do right by animals, and not just animals, but animals and human beings. All God's creatures deserve to be treated with respect.
And is there anything else that we can do from a policy perspective on this? Is there anything that we can adopt as a county to make this a little bit easier on the people who work in animal control and Lifeline?
It's not received as much publicity or attention as the expansion, but prior to that, we implemented a strategy that was more upstream, something that I developed where we now provide neutering and spade services free across the county. We are trying to reduce the number of unwanted pets being born in DeKalb County so that they don't end up in the shelter. What you're seeing now is a more proactive strategy. We're also subsidizing and supporting pet owners who may not be able to afford the food and shelter for their pets. So these things, I think, will result in fewer pets coming into our custody, which will help to relieve the overcrowding. We're just moving upstream with the strategy.
We talked about how animal control was something that was on your radar when you took office. Another issue that was on your radar and something I think dominated a lot of your time as CEO was watershed. And here we are 8 years later, and watershed is going to be an issue for the next CEO. How is this continued to be something that has dogged DeKalb County for administration after administration.
Well, we got a great watershed director now, Mr. David Hayes. We had a great director that preceded him, and so things are much more stable now. I guess it was last Monday, we celebrated the opening of the new state-of-the-art Snapfinger wastewater treatment plant, a $270 million facility that took 20 years to complete because of the issues that you focused on. But one of the things when we came in, we said this is going to be a priority. The foolishness no longer allowed. Let's just go to work, get it done. And we were able to cut the ribbon there. We've also made tremendous progress, I think, on responding to the consent decree. We've invested more than $1.2 billion, $700 million in the sewer system, over $500 million in the water distribution system to replace and upgrade our water mains. We had some break right there in your neighborhood. I think we were hanging out about 1 o'clock in the morning over in your neighborhood. So these are things that take place. The thing about infrastructure, when you neglect it for 30 or 40 years, it takes a lot of money and a significant amount of time to get it repaired and up and running the way it should. So we're going through that process. Progress is being made. Tremendous amount of work remains to be done. But thank God we're not where we started.
Let's remind our viewers really quick about the consent decree. What is it and what impact does it have on the situation with Watershed?
Well, DeKalb entered into a consent decree in 2011. But because of lack of progress, we were able to renegotiate and execute a modified consent decree in 2020. And so what we have been doing now is catching up for work that was not done. So now we have a modified consent decree, and we've been able to make a tremendous amount of progress under that modified consent decree, reducing sewer spills, improving the efficiency and effectiveness of our sewer system. So progress is being made, tremendous amount of work yet to be done.
And why was DeKalb County put under the consent decree? That was more the point I was driving at.
It's just historic failure to reduce the number of sewer spills that stretch back over decades. And finally, the federal government, EPA, EPD at the state level said enough was enough. They went to federal court, and the consent decree is designed to require the county to make necessary investments to protect the environment and support economic growth.
On the last year of your tenure as DeKalb County CEO, we started talking about the need for a water rate increase and this catastrophic failure that would happen if we don't start making these serious investments in our water infrastructure. Why hasn't that come up until now? It seems that this is not a new issue. There's been a need to increase the water rates for some time. Why is it just now coming to the fore again as you're on the way out?
Well, we increased rates in 2022. We had a 6% increase in 2022. What we were able to do is that we would increase our net proceeds by reducing costs and increasing the amount of people who were actually paying for the water that was being used. You recall when I took office, about 27,000 people were under a moratorium, where the entire county was under a moratorium. 27,000 people were just using water with no bill whatsoever. So we had to correct those issues, lift the moratorium, get everyone paying their fair share. So one of the positions I took is that I would not ask for an increase until every consumer, every ratepayer were paying his or her fair share. And so that's just part of the process. We had to change out 142,000 water meters because the county had purchased and installed about 42,000 meters that had a manufacturing defect. And the defect was that if they come in contact with moisture, they would malfunction.
It's a pretty significant defect for a water meter.
Yeah. So anyway, it was just a lot had to be done. We have a new billing system now. We increased the number of staff people, technicians, and consequently, we're in a position now to stand by the work that we do and have confidence that when we get a bill, it's accurate. When I came in, we were having 4,000 disputes a month filed by users, 4,000. Last month, less than 200.
One of the issues that continues to crop up when it comes to watershed is this issue of private and public lines. And the county, when there's a leak detected, the county often comes in and makes a determination of this is or this isn't our responsibility. What has been your approach to that, and what's the county's policy on that particular topic of whether it's a public or a private line and whose responsibility it is to fix it? Because if you're a private homeowner, sometimes these things can run into the tens of thousands of dollars.
Well, the line that runs from the meter to your house is private. Roughly 50% of our water and sewer system is privately owned. That's not generally understood. Everything from the meter to the street and beyond is owned by the county. The line that runs from the meter to your house, or lateral, is owned by the homeowner or the person who has effective control of it. It's not county owned, and consequently the county would violate the Constitution and local law if in fact we came in to try to correct it or fix it.
Because that would be a gratuity.
Absolutely.
Be considered a
One of
gratuity.
the things we're encouraging people to do when you purchase a house, get your laterals inspected. Get your water lines and your sewer lines inspected. You know, we inspect the roof, we inspect the foundation. Unfortunately, people fail to inspect the laterals that run from the public line, the meter, to the house. You should do it because I promise you, within a few years, you're going to be paying $2,000 or $3,000.
Public safety is another issue that was prominent not only during your tenure but in this last election. It's something that it's a little bit of a paradox because if you look at the crime statistics nationally, there's as little violent crime as there's ever been. It's more property crime now. That said, politics, as you know, is driven by perception, and perception has been that DeKalb County is not as secure. But living in unincorporated DeKalb County is not as secure as, say, if you were living in a city like Brookhaven. And a big part of that is the ability to recruit and retain officers, which is a problem across the board. Even cities are having trouble doing this. What do you think has been the root cause of DeKalb County struggling to attract and retain enough officers to cover shifts in the county?
It's a national crisis. It's not a DeKalb crisis. There's not a police department, particularly in large areas, that is not a challenge to recruit and hire and retain men and women, particularly after George Floyd. Law enforcement was not an area that many young people wanted to pursue, and consequently it created a labor shortage. But let me go back to the crime statistics. Actually, crime, as you stated, is down in DeKalb County right now. During the Great Recession, I keep getting them confused, during the pandemic, when homicide rates spiked all over this state, all over this nation, DeKalb was very modest in terms of a spike, and it's continued to go down since then. But if you're the victim of a crime, or if it happened in your neighborhood, those statistics mean nothing. And unfortunately, in some census tracts, crime is more prevalent than others. We have to continue to work, continue to be vigilant, and to do everything we can to help make DeKalb a safer place. But relatively speaking, the numbers don't lie. We don't generate the numbers, but crime is decreasing in DeKalb County.
What's the best way for the public to access those numbers? We were talking about this with some other colleagues, and Atlanta publishes Part 1 crime statistics regularly. Is there anything like that in DeKalb County where you can go and look and see, oh, there's been this many robberies this month, there's been this many entering autos, that sort of thing?
Through the police department, we have a public information office, and we share those numbers. I can't tell you how many different media outlets have requested information, and I know for a fact it's been shared with them. And of course, it's open to the public. Anyone can have access to it.
So what's your opinion of Jack Lumpkin and Martha Ramos, the two individuals who are in charge of public safety in DeKalb County? Have you been satisfied with their performance?
Yes, Martha Ramos is a historic figure in DeKalb County. She's the first woman ever to serve as police chief. And she has been a staunch advocate, particularly for pay increases. As you know, we're the only jurisdiction that pays triple overtime to our officers. Because we have a shortage, we're asking officers to work extra hours. But that's because of her. We have some of the highest salaries in the Southeast United States because she has been a strong advocate for that. And I think Director Lumpkin has also been a great advocate, not just for the police department, but for all men and women in uniform, fire department. We are 100% staffed or close to it with the fire department right now. So they've done a good job under very difficult circumstances. You know, it's easy for us to stand here in January of 25 and forget that for 2.5 years, all of this had to occur in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. Everything was exponentially more difficult. And the men and women in DeKalb, not just the police and fire, but sanitation and roads and drainage, everyone performed in an exceptional way. I get a little peeved when the armchair quarterback sit back now, the people who were, frankly, sequestered and what did they call it, staying in place, can criticize or even armchair the work of the people who had to go out and get it done under the most difficult circumstances. It's just not fair.
Give a shout out to Fire Chief Darnell Fulham. We run into him quite a lot at the Corner Cup Coffee. He and that department continue to be exemplary, and I hear nothing but good things about the fire department. So shout out to him as well. Don't want to leave him out. Let's talk about your future political plans. You don't strike me as the kind of person who wants to stay retired. So what do you want to do now that you're leaving this part of your life behind and you're moving forward?
Well, first, to spend time reflecting. I think a lot more than I do. People don't. I appreciate and celebrate the joy of thinking. I'm going to rest, and then we'll see what the future holds. I enjoy public service, and if opportunities present themselves, I'll consider that and see whether it's good for myself, my wife, and my family, and whether or not I can make a difference.
Are there any jobs that interest you? Senator, governor? Where do you go after you're the CEO of DeKalb County and you've been the labor commissioner?
Well, you go home.
First, you go home.
First, you go home.
But after you get bored, then where do you go?
I'm not getting bored. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. You know, one of the things my mother always taught us to say, son, don't get in front of yourself. I'm at peace. I'm celebrating the fact of what you just said to begin this particular interview, is that we were able to accomplish some things in DeKalb County that no one thought was possible. As you know, smart people had written DeKalb off, dysfunctional, rotten to the core, broken. The CEO's executive form of government needs to be blown up. We proved the critics wrong. So I'm going to go and celebrate that and enjoy that and celebrate the fact that I was surrounded by 6,000 people who would not allow the naysayers to dictate what we could accomplish. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going over to Athens, where I grew up, and out in Clark County, and sit under my wisdom tree on my daddy's farm. It's an old oak tree, hundreds of years old. And when I have important decisions to make or thoughts to think, I go spend time under my wisdom tree. So if you need me, that's where I'll be, Dan.
Solitude is a vastly underappreciated part of thinking thoughts, and I know Abraham.
Why people are so afraid of solitude?
Abraham Lincoln was a famous practitioner of solitude as well. When he had important decisions to make, he would veer off to a house where he would go, and he'd just be by himself, and he'd pace the floor. Wanted to talk to you about the topic, the theme of this episode, which is the exit interview. And normally when you do an exit interview, you get asked a lot of HR type questions about the culture. I don't want to get too far into that sort of thing, but I did want to ask two questions. One, what do you think is DeKalb County's greatest strength? And two, what do you think is the biggest challenge that's facing the next CEO?
DeKalb's greatest strength is its amazing diversity of race and color and creed and religion, socioeconomics. We have extremely wealthy people. We have people who are in the midst of gripped by poverty. Because of Clarkston and other communities, people come to DeKalb from every country on the planet. So it's our diversity. That's what is our greatest strength. our greatest challenge is our diversity. Because when you're developing strategies or programs or trying to assume a position of leadership, you have to really be conscious of the fact that the decisions you're making are impacting people, and depending on where you sit on the spectrum, those decisions impact different people differently. And you have to take all of that into concern as you're trying to develop a more holistic idea about what is in the best interest of DeKalb County. That is the challenge of any leader who holds a position in a place like DeKalb.
Well, Mr. Mike Thurmond, as a resident and a taxpayer and a voter of DeKalb County, I just want to say thank you for your 8 years of public service. Thank you for bringing something back to this government that had been missing and sort of setting a standard. I think that's really important. And whatever you do, wish you the best of luck. I hope whenever you do make some plans, you'll come and share those with us on the Decatur Dish.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you for being an honest critic, too, by the way. And you don't miss your words. Let me just be clear. And for you to offer that as a compliment, I accept it in the highest and most respected way, because it comes from your heart. And it was not just me, though. It was a team of people who rallied to the flag at a critical moment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Thurmond. This is the Decatur Dish Show. We air on Atlanta News First every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. You can check us out on the Atlanta News First Plus app. You can download that on your phone or on your streaming devices. See all the latest news from Decatur-ish at decatorish.com. With that, we hope everyone has a great week. Stay warm, and we'll see you next week right here on ANF Plus.